All right. Good evening, everybody. How's everyone doing tonight? We'll go ahead and get started. It looks like we've already started some chats. So I love to see where everybody's from. Florida, New Jersey, Texas, California, Kentucky, Massachusetts, Illinois, Indiana. So welcome, everybody. My name is Rachel Petrie. This is the Splint Blueprint. So let's go ahead and get started. Thank you all for being here. I know everybody's probably had a busy day, and if you're like me, school has just started and it's kind of been a whiplash back into reality. So we'll try and keep tonight's webinar to about an hour. We'll do about 30 minutes or so of a lecture, and you'll get to see some different demonstrations of videos and pictures. And then we will have time for questions and answers at the end. So I can see where everybody's from already. If you don't care, just go ahead and let us know too your discipline and what setting you're currently working in. So Allison, NICU, OT, me too. PT, Jolene, early intervention. All right. Pediatric, early intervention, combination, NICU. Okay, so nice variety of different things, outpatient peds. Okay, great. All right, so today we're going to be talking about the 4-step framework for pediatric therapists. So looking at how do we confidently initiate orthotic fabrication, how do we fabricate them, what do we fabricate, and then how do we start to document and bill for those. There will be time for questions and answers at the end of this webinar, but if you're worried you're going to forget something like I would do, feel free to go ahead and put it in the chat and just know that we'll come back to those questions at the end of the webinar. Also, if you're having any technical difficulties, you're having trouble hearing anything like that, just let us know and put that in the chat too, okay? So again, thank you all for being here, and I'm excited to talk a little bit more about splinting tonight. Hopefully everybody was able to see your free download that's available in the Pediatric TheraTools account. If you forgot, then go ahead and download that once this webinar is over. It's called Ready, Set, Splint. It's specifically for NICU orthotics, but I think it would be helpful no matter what setting you're in. The beginning of this download looks at just kind of dispelling some of the myths around splinting, particularly in the NICU, but again, that can be generalized across settings. So take a look at that. It also has some different diagnoses and what splints could be beneficial for those diagnoses. So if you're not quite sure, that your patient might need something, you're just not sure what, this chart and graphic kind of outlines that for you. Okay, so stay till the end and you'll learn a little bit more about how you can get some more free resources that you can just download and start using. There's a splint supply checklist. So if you're just getting started in the splinting world, or if you've been splinting for a little bit, but you just don't love what you're using, you need some fresh ideas, documentation and billing. So that goes over L codes, all the different things. We'll talk a little bit about that later tonight too. And then just some documentation examples. You'll also get a nursing and communication toolkit. So the first thing on this page is a custom orthotic wear schedule. So what you're wearing, what your patient is wearing, some different education that you're going to give, all of that is on this handout for you, ready to print and download and use. All right, so a little bit more about me just quickly. I'm married to my high school sweetheart. We have 2 girls, Zoe and June. They are somehow in middle school, which is crazy because I'm still 24, so I don't know how that happened. We also have a dog, which everybody in my family jokes that he's my favorite child. He's my best boy, Boomerang. I really love to bake. If there are any other bakers out there in the world, put your hand up in the chat. If you haven't, you should check out Sally's Baking Addiction. They do like a monthly challenge, which is always fun. It kind of makes you bake something outside of what you normally would. I also really like romance novels. So if there's any other romance readers out there, let me know some recommendations that you have. Okay, so a little bit about me in terms of splinting. I know a lot of people, when I talk to them about my, kind of how I initially got into it, I had a really great professor in OT school. So that kind of started my love for splinting. He was really patient, really took his time, help us to really understand what we were doing. And from there, I was able to do a level 2 fieldwork, so 3 months in an outpatient setting. And there I really got to have direct one-on-one feedback with my mentor, in terms of lots of different variety of splints and experiences and things like that. After college, I worked in inpatient rehab. We did a lot of casting for tone management and things like that. After that, I moved to a different state and focused more on pediatric outpatient therapy. The clinic I was in did not have a lot of availability for custom orthotics. So we did a lot of prefabs, a lot of your Joe Cools, McKee, Bennix, those sorts of things. A lot of makeshift in terms of pool noodles and TheraTube, that sort of thing. But now where I am and where I've almost been for a decade now, which is crazy, is a level 1 trauma center. So it's all about custom orthotics there. We have a burn unit there I've worked in. We've also are connected to an outpatient center that is attached to a plastics team, an ortho team, and a hand therapy clinic. So that's where I really learned to get faster with splinting. When you have patients just coming in and staring at you, you learn to move a little bit quicker. So because of the complexity of the patients that we saw, a lot of what we did was, or what we do is custom orthotics. So I've done a lot of different splinting in a lot of different settings, but I feel like now I've finally found my one love in the OT world, and that's in the NICU, which is where I still am. I'm a full-time therapist there. And I don't think had I not had all of the experience with splinting that I would have been so confident to start splinting in our NICU, but we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. Okay, so if you all want to type in the chat, let me know how much splinting you guys got in school and how much splinting you're doing at the moment. Mainly prefab. None, that's okay. You guys are both in the right place. Minimal in school, mainly prefab. Yeah, so the more students I talk to, it seems like there's an option for more splinting as like a secondary course, but they're not really getting a whole lot just in the general OT curriculum. Okay. Okay. Yeah, so you guys are all in the right spot. This course is, designed for beginners, and we'll sort of talk about all kinds of different things to help get you started. Okay, so this is just sort of a review in terms of why do we splint. So this little girl that you're seeing, you'll get to see her splint be made here in a few minutes. But we want to prevent tendon shortening. And along with that, we want to prevent overstretched musculature. So if we're stuck in wrist flexion, all of our extensors are on length and our flexors are shortened. And so why that matters is, for functional things. So we want to prevent any sort of positional deformities that can then impair our functional use. So everything that we do, every splint that we're making is really tied back to function. We want to promote those typical motor patterns, no matter which age group that you're working with. And again, just supporting joint integrity. So the reason that we splint, when we start to think about things, all of this is going to be kind of the number one reason that we're doing this. So we all know about splints. We all know what kind of generally what they're good for. But the real question is, why do we custom splint? Why should we take the extra time to do that? So if we make a custom splint on someone, we can really focus on their unique anatomy. And so in turn, you're going to have better compliance from both the patient and the caregiver, even if you're working in the NICU, because it's going to be a little bit more comfortable. If the parents and the caregivers can see that, then they're also going to be more willing to help get that splint on versus something prefab that's slipping off, not fitting right. You're kind of having to shove something in where it really doesn't belong. And with things like that, sometimes you'll see some different issues with skin integrity. Now, not to say that you don't ever have skin integrity issues with custom splints, because of course you do, but we'll talk about how we can prevent those as much as we can. Our splints that are custom made are also waterproof. So if you have kiddos that are swimming or like to go to the swimming pool, if they're out playing in the snow, depending on the time of year, they can still do all of their activities. They can bathe in it, and then they'll just take it off, make sure both are dry and clean, and put it right back on. So a lot more hygienic compared to like your plaster or your cast, those sorts of things. If you're working with older kiddos, it's always fun to get them to help pick out different colors and different designs. They can cut out little shapes and you can plaster them on, or kind of make their splint into more of like an animal look, or, you know, something like that to make it a little bit more fun for them. And custom splinting, so if we know how to do that and we can go ahead and help our families, that's really going to be the best thing. That our families have so much going on. You guys have seen this, I'm sure. There's long wait lists to get into a hand therapist, or someone more specialized that can make a splint. A lot of times you won't see a very good carryover because your families have so many different appointments and things to do. So if we can go ahead and help them out with this and help to promote function sooner, we can and should. Okay, so getting back to the good part here. So why I believe you can do this and anyone can do this. I've heard lots of different things over the years that people say, if you can't make a split in under 5 minutes, you shouldn't even try. I just really don't believe that. I think practice makes you better and makes you faster. So that's usually my number one thing that I start out with, is that your splint doesn't have to be perfect. Not every splint that leaves your hand is going to be exactly how you want it to be, but it has to be purposeful. So, you know, we want our splints obviously to be thoughtfully crafted and that sort of thing. But when you look at the splint, the number one thing is that it's functional and it's doing what it's intended to do. I graduated school OT school in 2011. And so I feel like even since then, there's been so many changes in thermoplastic materials. I never would have thought that you would be able to just take a cup of hot water and make a splint at the bedside in the NICU. But now there's so many cool new materials out there that you can learn about and be able to do without having a whole lot of fancy equipment. The other thing is finding a good mentor. So if you don't have a good mentor, you can always reach out to somebody at our team here, and we're happy to help you with that too, and join some different groups, that sort of thing. But having somebody that you can bounce ideas off of. And lastly, just remember that every splint that you make is a step towards supporting function and development. So kind of going back to that first bullet point there, you know, splinting is more like a marathon. It's not just a sprint. It's not just a one and done, especially with the pediatric population, but it's very fulfilling and rewarding to see small gains, you know, over time that, you know, can be linked back to the splint that you provided for them. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with the 4-step framework for pediatric therapists. Okay, so step 1, eliminate the guesswork. Most of the times, you know, when you're starting to look at a baby or an older child, there's 3 real questions that you need to ask yourself when you're considering making a splint. So is there a functional skill that this splint that you're thinking about would help support or protect? You know, so kind of looking at function, where are the limitations? What is missing? What's developmentally appropriate that maybe they're not able to do because of some, you know, neurological injury or orthopedic injury, that sort of thing. And would that splint help? Have conservative strategies failed? So splinting is not usually our number one go-to. We use it in conjunction with other things. It's just one thing in our tool bag. So have you tried home exercise programs? Have you tried stretching and massage and neuromuscular facilitation? Are those things helping? Have you tried different positioning strategies? But everything is still sort of status quo. You're not really seeing a lot of improvements. That might be an indicator that you need to do something a little bit different. And then will this orthotic help to prevent long-term complications? So what is the risk if you do not splint? So if the answer to any of those questions is yes, then it's a good indicator that you should start thinking about what you might make for this person. So prepare your why. Go back to those 3 questions and help kind of rehearse what you're going to say to advocate for this physician's order. So remember, we always stay within our scope of practice, both state and federal guidelines. We always stay within our scope of practice, no matter your discipline. So make sure you know what those are. And then off the bat, always explain your safety measures. So be proactive. What are you going to do right away to make sure that this splint is safe, that it's not going to cause skin issues? What's your plan going forward? So are you going to follow up with a phone call? Are they going to come back to you next week? If you're in the NICU or acute care setting, are you going to check it after it's been on for 3 hours? You know, those sorts of things. Okay, so step 1, we eliminate the guesswork. We figure out our why. Before we move into step 2, I just want to say a quick note here about heat sources. So it's a big misunderstanding, I think, that you need a big fancy splint cart and splint pan. So here's some different things to think about depending on your setting. If you work in a NICU or acute care setting and there's a coffee pot in your break room, you can just use that little lever to empty out some hot water. And a lot of our low heat thermoplastic materials you can use to warm up and fabricate with just those 2 things, which is really exciting. And it's one of my favorite materials. An electric skillet. So if you are in really anywhere, outpatient or home health, and you're allowed to bring something like this in, always check with your agencies and make sure that you can bring something like this, especially if you're working in early intervention. But an electric skillet is a great way that you can have something kind of on the go. If you're, again, working in those types of setting, you can also just use a stove and a pan or a pot. A sous vide, so this is intended more for cooking, but it has a thermometer that can keep your water at a specific temperature, so that is always a nice option. Having a food grade thermometer is nice to have, you know, if you're kind of making your supply checklist, because you can put it in the water and just do a quick spot check of what your heat is and make sure that that aligns with the splint material that you're using. And then the last couple here, just always make sure you have a spatula and a towel. Protect yourself first so that you can continue helping others. You always want to damp your material off on a towel so that you don't drip hot water onto your patient. Okay, so moving on to step 2, we're going to be gathering all of the supplies. So let's talk about some of these splint materials here. Okay, so OrthiCast, that's what you can see here in the blue on the picture. It comes in different colors, different sizes. OrthiCast More is the same, but it's a little bit thicker. So if you have something that you need to be a little bit more durable, or you have a larger surface area, you can choose to use OrthiCast More. OrthiColors, they come in all kinds of different fun colors, and then Taylor. So these are just some of my personal favorites. I don't get any kickback from any of these companies. They're just ones that I've tended to like for the pediatric population. You'll need Velcro and strapping, obviously, to keep the splint secure in place. A good pair of sharp scissors. So everybody always makes fun of me, but you really have to protect your scissors and make sure that they stay clean and in good repair, because it will really save you a lot of time and energy if you have a good pair of scissors. Don't let them rust. If you get them wet, dry them back off. I like to have kinesio tape to line all of the splint edges. It's not really necessary, but if you are using like OrthiColors or Taylor that has micro perforations in them and you make a cut, the kinesio tape can also help kind of smooth that out, but it makes it have a nice aesthetically pleasing finished edge. And then if you have handouts like some of the ones that you'll get at the end of this webinar, just go ahead and have some of those printed off. That way it's not stressful. You can just give them a quick handout of all the education, so you don't have to be worrying about anything, making sure that you've told them everything. You just have a quick grab and go, and you can make a quick check mark in terms of what you made, what the wear schedule is, your phone number, all that sort of thing. Okay, so step 1, we decide what we're going to make. If we need to make anything, we get our doctor's order. Step 2, we decide what sort of heat source we're going to use, and we get all of our materials ready and out. So that way we're not having to guess anything else. So step 3, I think step 3 is one of the more stressful things for people that when I talk to a therapist, it's really about, I've tried splinting here and there, but I just couldn't get the position right. My fabrication was just kind of sloppy. It felt really stressful. So let's look at a few different ways that this might make your life a little bit easier. So just yesterday, I made a splint for a baby with unilateral wrist flexion, perhaps we think from like a radial nerve palsy. And so when you're looking at making a splint like that, if they have a lot of tone going into wrist flexion, we don't want to try to come from here and push them up when we're fighting against gravity and trying to manipulate our splinting material at the same time. So what we'll choose to do instead is to put them in supination, let gravity help you with wrist extension, and then you can really just focus on finessing and positioning. So with splinting, gravity is your friend. So think about before you even start, how are you going to put them so that gravity can help assist you with this? And then again, if we're talking about the NICU or a baby, we want them to be swaddled with the exception of whatever extremity that you're going to fabricate your splint on, and then have them supported and relaxed. So they can be breastfeeding, like you'll see in this next bullet point. They can be feeding, they can be however they need to be comfortable and relaxed. It's really, really hard to make a splint with somebody who is fussy or crying or moving all over the place. Same for your older kiddos. You can get them distracted. You can have them play with a little piece of material in the other hand, have them make something on their baby doll or their teddy bear, that sort of thing. Whatever you need to do, some little fidgets, that sort of thing. But we really just need all of our patients calm and relaxed so that we can make the best splint possible. Ideally, if you're in the NICU setting or early intervention, toddlerhood, etc., this goes for all of us. Have them, post feed if you can. If this is something that you've been thinking about, and in subsequent sessions you're going to do this, talk to the family about bringing a snack or making sure they've eaten, or schedule around nap time, feeding times, that sort of thing, so that you can have the best success. So sort of planning ahead. And then again, with your older kiddos, let them practice just kind of playing around with the materials. You can have them choose colors. They really like that. So get them engaged in things. Okay. So step 4, we're going to talk about billing and documentation. We're going to go into this just a little bit more, but all of those free handouts that you're going to get include all of these things that we're going to reference here in just a minute. So the first thing you always want to make sure that you're documenting is the physician's name for your splinting order that you have, the date of that splinting order, what they ordered exactly, because of which diagnosis, was it on the right or the left? And then the most important thing is to include the rationale and the medical necessity. So why are you fabricating this splint? Why do they need it? Why did you make extra steps in time to fabricate something custom? Okay, so this is that handout I was talking about, your custom orthotic wear schedule. You can see here, so you can print this out and just write what you made, what side is it on. Just remember what makes sense to you and I doesn't always make sense to everyone else. So we want to make sure we're over communicating. We're super clear about where we want this splint to be. So we always educate on the wear schedule, how to care for the splint. So how do we clean it? How long do we want them to wear it? Where are some problematic areas that you really want them to look out for? So especially in between the web space or in between finger spaces on any bony prominence, point all of those out. I always have my families show me how to get the splint on and off. That way I can document it and I can see and give cues as I need to help them. Same with the nurses. And really they appreciate that because, we're only here for a brief amount of period and then they're the ones having to do it. So they're really thankful when you take extra time to make sure that they can get the splint on and off. So if you can, and if it's indicated, do some exercises with the splint on. So kind of see your splint in action. So is it doing what you intended to do? Are they able to use their hand better? Is their ankle resting in more of a functional neutral position? If it's a baby, make sure when they're moving all around and kicking or, taking their hands everywhere, just making sure that that splint is staying in place and it's not moving. if it's moving too much or they're able to get out of it, that's when you're going to run into skin integrity issues. And then I think one of the most important things is explaining the reason that you put the splint on, both to your families, to your nursing staff, to your physicians. Everyone wants to know why. You and I, the first time somebody tells us to do something, we always say, okay, why? So same for our families. If they understand what the benefit of the splint is and what the risk of not wearing the splint is, they're going to be more apt to help you get this on and keep it on. Okay, so L codes, your L codes are really just the material and the time that it takes you to make the splint. So when you document this, you're going to give the name of the splint. You're going to put the laterality. So did you make it on the right or the left? What position did you fabricate them in? So sometimes you might not get them all the way to whatever degrees of extension or flexion that you are looking to, but in subsequent, remolds, that's what you're going to achieve or aim for. So document that. Again, the rationale, the medical necessity, and how they tolerated the fabrication. So were they really fussy? Did they not mind at all? Just a quick note about that. So again, all of this is in the handout so you can reference back. And then, so your L code, remembering that when you make a splint and you bill for the splint itself with that L code charge, and those L codes go based on joints that are involved. So whenever you first bill for one, it includes 8 minutes of general training, but if you are going over that 8 minutes, you can also bill an initial orthotic fitting and training charge. And so that's when you're really going in depth. You're talking about all of these extra things. You're having them show you, you're watching them move, that sort of thing. You're giving them written handouts or exercises like massages to work on, neuro and sensory exercises to work on additionally within the splint. So it always has to kind of tie back to the splint and how they're using that. I'll always give extra supplies, the phone number, if applicable. We'll make them in follow-up appointments somewhere else. And again, you're just going to reference how they're tolerating the fabrication. Okay, so subsequent orthotic fitting and training, this charge is going to be for if you're in the NICU and say a week later they've grown a little bit or they're moving a little bit more and you want to remold so that you've got them in a better position, you can throw that splint right back in the water and remold it. And you're not going to bill another L code. You're just going to bill for your time with this subsequent charge here. It doesn't have to be a whole remold, though. It can also just be any sort of modification that you make. So if you're just trimming or flaring, if you need to replace some Velcro, that sort of thing, do some additional training. Any of your follow-ups and checkbacks on these splints are all going to go back under your subsequent OFT charge. And this is a time-based charge. So if you're with them for 30 minutes, you would bill 2 of these. Okay, so some goals, essentially I won't read all of these to you guys. You can kind of quickly glance through there, but just remember that all of your goals with the splint should tie back to function and medical necessity. So what do we want them to be able to do and achieve because of this splint? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and play this video now. You can see the little girl that we referenced earlier. I'm going to make a little Munster on her so you can see. So a Munster splint, in case you don't know, you can fabricate it in different positions. In this one, I'm going to put her forearm in neutral. A Munster is good if you have like a both bone forearm fracture after a fall. If you're in the NICU, I've made this on a brachial plexus injury before. So somebody that is really rotating into that pronated position. Lots of different uses for the Munster. It allows for elbow flexion and extension, but keeps the wrist, if you would like it to, and forearm in the correct position. You can extend it out to the fingers if you want to, but this one is just going to include the wrist. The audio is a little bit quiet, so I'll probably just talk through it. So she chose green. So this is how I measure every time. I just put their arm on there. I look for the thumb and the elbow. So I'm going to make a little hole right here where her thumb is, and that's where she's going to slide her thumb through that you'll see in a minute here. And then where her elbow is, we're going to cut out a semicircle to allow for elbow flexion and extension. Oh, there. So this is the hole for your thumb here. So it doesn't look very nice at first. You just push your scissors through the back of your splint material. It will look kind of jagged at first, and then you're going to roll the splint material back on itself. You'll do the same thing here at the bottom where your elbow crease is going to be. So when their thumb is moving, they have a nice soft edge, and they're not going to have any sort of adverse reactions from the thumb here because it's nice and soft and round. You can also line it with something if you need to, but generally this is just fine and you don't have any issues with skin breakdown. The same thing at the elbow, you're just rolling it on itself. So if you're just starting out, I would recommend doing it this way. So go ahead right after you get it out of the water, roll your thumb hole and roll your elbow crease or whatever splint that you're making that you're going to make a hole for or a cutout, go ahead and roll it. That way it'll save you time later when you actually go to make your fabrication. So you're just putting it on the towel, you get all of your dripping water off, and then I always test it on my own forearm first to make sure that I'm not gonna burn anyone. I've never burned anyone, just for the record, but that's generally speaking what I do. With this material, you do not have to use a stockinette 4. You can, but you don't have to. So if you start like what we just showed, just make sure that the part that you rolled out is on the outside, not the inverse, not flipped in. So that's the one thing you have to be really careful about. So you always ask them if the child's old enough, you ask them if it feels too warm. If it's a baby, you just take extra time and caution to make sure that it doesn't feel too warm on your forearm. So the tabs you can see are on either side of the elbow on the epicondyle. So that's preventing that supination, pronation, rotation of the forearm. And you're also having material on both sides. So you can put them in supination. You can also put them in neutral or pronation, just whichever, whatever you're attempting to do, you can put them in with this monster. So what you're saying, or what I'm saying here, if you can't hear, is um, depending on how much material you cut to begin with, you can pinch and pull this. For in this instant, I didn't need to, but if you needed like almost like a second set of hands, but you didn't have it, you could pinch and pull that material to stick to itself. That way, you can focus then on your positioning if you're trying to get the wrist in extension or trying to keep the elbow in a certain direction, especially if it's, pulling in one way or another and you need that other hand to help you, that's a good way just to kind of help yourself out a little bit, is to pinch and pull, and then you'll just cut those tabs off. So it's a little high right here. That's what I was just showing you. So we want her to be able to fully bend her elbow all the way without that splint impeding. So always double check that, and you can cut that all the way off if you need to. You can just roll and flare it, but make sure that you're not restricting any motion that you don't intend to. Okay, and then when you take the splint off, you always want to flare it and then pull it back off. Same with putting it on. You'll flare it, you'll open the splint up, and then you'll put it back on. That way you're not shearing and having any friction against your skin. Okay, so this is the final product. You can see there's a strap here at the wrist. That's where you'll strap it in first. You've got one through the hand and palm area here, and then one that goes around the back of the arm. So her arm's so small, I didn't need to add another strap, but if you did and you were having some, like a bigger arm, or you felt like she was kind of wiggling her forearm in the splint, you could always add another splint right here, and sometimes I'll do that too. So again, the goal for this one, she can do elbow flexion and extension, but cannot do pronation and supination. You can support their wrist if you need to, but it keeps them in a neutral position or extended position so they can still have full functional use of their fingers. Okay, so we're all done with the lecture portion of tonight, and I hope you've enjoyed learning about these 4 kind of key steps to help get you started, or to help you if you're already splinting a little bit. You know, it's really about just knowing what you're going to make, what materials you're going to use, how do you get everyone on board, and then how do you document and bill for these things. So if you're interested in learning more about splinting and you want to spend a couple of days with me, we have a couple classes this fall. There's one in September, one in October, one in November. There's just a few seats left in every class. So all of the splint materials are mailed to you. You can see if you choose that option. If you already have splint materials and you don't want that, there's another option for that. So if you do choose the splint option, the splint package, it's $485. I always like to try to tell people quickly what's included in that package. So this is an actual picture of what you get. So there's 3 different types of splinting material in there. So you've got this one here is the OrthiCast. This is the OrthiCast More. You've got a couple different options of the Orthi colors. You'll get Velcro and straps and kinesio tape, and I always throw a few cute little stickers in there for you. And then what you will learn, so that's probably the most important question. We'll go through embryology, so how do limbs even form and what can go wrong? Why do you have 6 digits sometimes, that sort of thing. So we'll talk a lot about that. We'll do a real thorough anatomy review. We'll look at some different diagnoses that benefit from splinting. And then together, both on day 1 and day 2, we practice making splints. We do lots of different techniques to make sure that everybody gets what they need. So it's a really small class size. Everybody kind of unmutes. So we work together. You'll watch a demonstration video, and then we'll do each step together, and I'll kind of talk you through each step of the way. You'll learn more than we did tonight about billing and documenting. We'll talk about goals. We'll do some case studies together. So it's a really fun, full 2-day packed course that you can start splinting and using stuff. Usually people have a lot of extra materials they can take back and start using on Monday. Okay, so what sets this course apart from other courses? Like I said, it's small. There's only a few people in each class, and it can be customized to participants. So I always give people the option. There's 4 basic splints that we make in every course. But beyond that, you have options to tell me what you're interested in. We can talk through a case that you have. If you want to stay after or come early, we can always do that. So like I said, there's only 4 spots left this fall. I only teach this class a couple times a year because I work full time. I have a family. So I love splinting and I love to teach this, but I only do it a few times a year. So in this course, I saw there's a couple people on this webinar that have already taken the course, but if you go back into your account now, you'll see these bonuses uploaded. These are already included in the cost of the course. So you'll get a quick reference pattern. So I don't really teach a lot of patterns, more of just a general guideline of how to make splints. So you'll get all of that to keep with you to reference back to. You'll get a specific 30-day NICU success plan. So I want you all to start using your techniques right away so you don't forget. So day 1, you go in and you kind of know week 1 what you need to start working on to make sure that you're successful and use these skills. So the next bonus is this goal bank. So that way, you can go back to work on Monday and you're not quite sure. You can start with these. You're welcome to edit them, take them out, make them your own. But this just, is intended to give you sort of a landing page. Some different documentation examples. So again, it's hard to know where to start with some of this. So there's a few different, there's not just 2 examples, there's several more, but different examples in terms of what to write. We will go through in real time some case studies together, but then you'll also have access to different case studies of different splints that I've made and kind of how the case progressed and things that you can expect. You'll also have ongoing email access to mentorship. So everybody that's taken my course always has, the availability to email me. I have people emailing questions all the time or sending pictures and asking for feedback. So, I always like and wish that I would have had something like that earlier on. So I try to provide that to people going forward, especially if you're by yourself or just not quite sure. It's always nice to have someone in your corner to help you think through some of these things. Okay, so now if you log back into your Pediatric TheraTools account, so how you access this webinar, those free downloads that I mentioned at the beginning should all be available and live for you to download and start using. So you're welcome to grab all of those. And then just as an extra thank you for everyone who came on tonight. For the first 5 people that sign up for the continuing education course, you'll get a free mentorship call. So that can be used anytime after the course for when you have that case that you're just really not sure what to do. We can call and talk through some different things. Okay, so now it's time for questions. I'll start with just these 3 questions. If anybody wants to type in the chat other questions that you have, feel free to. So this continuing education course, the course itself, I think it's in the chat now too. It's called Custom Orthotic Fabrication for Infants and Children. So really it is for beginners. It's for even if you have a little bit of splinting experience, but you want to learn a little bit more, this course is for you. It is approved for 14 hours of AOTA credit. People always want to know what do they need. Really, the only thing you need is a baby doll. There's a link on the website to an Amazon baby doll that's pretty inexpensive, or if you already have one, you can use that. They just need to have an open hand. So even if the thumb is like that, it doesn't really matter. Only one open hand is required. And then make sure that it has a hard foot, not like a soft plush foot, and it needs to have like an actual foot. Some sort of a heat source. We went through all of those earlier, so any ones of those are fine. And then some of your other basic things, spatula, towels, and scissors. Everything else we will send to you like you saw in the video there. So we'll send all the splint materials and things like that to you. So the other question is, how can you make splints online? How is this feasible and does it actually work? So I promise you that it does. Lots of therapists take this on Friday and Saturday, and then they start splinting on Monday. I've even had some therapists who I sort of worry about their mental health because they took my course and then they made splints on Sunday because I had to work the next day. So you can really start using this the next day. But we try to incorporate lots of different things to make sure that you can see everything. So lots of pictures from different angles, different videos. We go through step by step together after you watch the video, and then you hold it up so I can see it. We give you a check mark, and then we move on. So lots of good tangible skills. Really, custom splinting gives you as a therapist so much value too, especially if you're kind of stuck in a rut. You want to learn something new. You want to challenge yourself, just sort of set yourself, aside professionally. This is a great way to kind of elevate your role as a therapist and your clinical skills. Okay. So any questions now, feel free to type in the chat, or you can go ahead and unmute yourself now too. But if you think of a question later, my email's on the screen here. You're welcome to email us at any time. And thank you all so much for joining tonight. I know everybody is super busy and probably worked today and is working tomorrow. So I just appreciate your time and hope that you learned some things and you can take those back to your clinics or hospitals tomorrow.